This is Remote Daily, your daily dose of inspiration. This is Remote Daily, an oasis of innovation. For your mind, your soul, and your heart. Connect, act, and recharge with Remote Daily. This is Remote Daily.
Please welcome the founder and managing partner of Backstage Capital and the author of It's About Damn Time, the one and only Arlan Hamilton. Hi, Arlan. It's good to see you.
Hello, hello. How are you doing? Hi, everybody.
How are you? How are your loved ones?
Yeah, mostly good. You know, it changes every day. It changes every week. But I think March and April were probably tougher now that we kind of know a little bit more about what to expect. May has definitely been lighter for everybody. And thankfully, no major COVID-related illnesses in my immediate family. So we're good there. It took a little bit of figuring things out in the early part.
Arlan, your wife and I share the same citizenship. She's also German. And I know that the two of you barely left the house for the last, I think, 10 or 12 weeks. So I have to ask you just out of personal interest, and I'm not fishing for compliments here. How is quarantining with a German?
I would write a whole book about it if I didn't have a new book. I actually think her being German has a lot to do with how well this is going, if I'm being honest. So Anna, I should say, she lets me call her Anna, she's always been very balanced and very logical and really easy to get along with. But we have, for most of our relationship, spent months at a time or weeks at a time away from each other, or even when we were living together, I would be on the road a lot. And so we haven't, I think the longest before now that we'd spent together would be probably a full month. So now today is my 11th week being isolated, and I have left my home one time to get a prescription. And those 77 days. Anna's probably on week 9 because she was out a little bit. I'm more of a germaphobe, so you didn't have to tell me twice. I was in. We laugh every day. We have the best time. We still have hug breaks. That's like our secret to success. We have hug breaks in the middle of the day. And it's just been really, really okay. Like, that's been the easiest part of this whole thing, our relationship. So I'm not gonna knock wood here. That's been the easiest part. And I've joked with her that it has to do with her being German, but I actually think a lot has to do with being German.
I love the idea of hug breaks. Thank you for introducing us to this. How many hug breaks, may I ask, do you take a day? Do you have any advice?
It varies, but it's at least one. And we're kind of probably a little edgier than people think we are. So we're not sitting around like doing this with each other and like, hey, we're pretty we don't do that. But all it takes is one of us to walk into a room or come back from something and say hug break, and the other person says hug break, and then it's on. So maybe 2 or 3 on I wouldn't be more than that, but like, yeah, it's good. And it's anytime there's any like you're gonna get close to being snippy with each other, it's like hug break on, because we really don't have a lot to get mad at each other about, because we're both of us are very into independent thought and action, right? we're very much an Alanis Morissette song. Like we both believe that the other person should be able to do whatever they want and live, their life and to the fullest. And so they're not these little things that kind of come up like, why are you doing that? Where are you going? What's this? It's just like, oh, cool, you're working on a new song. Awesome. And she's like, oh, did you have a good meeting? And I'm like, yeah, and so it's, that has a lot to do with it as well.
Thank you for sharing this, Arlan, and bless your heartbreaks. You were recommended, or I should say, introduced to us by Mark Cuban, who was on Remote Daily just a few days ago. He's also the biggest investor, I believe, in Backstage Capital, your venture fund for underrepresented founders. Sort of?
Yeah, sort of. So he's not directly invested in Backstage. He and I have a joint fund that he is the sole investor in. So it's just a little bit inaccurate to say he's the largest investor in Backstage, but he is one of the largest investors that I have across entities. Absolutely.
Got it.
Yeah.
Your Backstage Capital and all you do combined is over $7 million now invested in more than 100 companies. And your book, that is behind you on the shelf in a slightly enlarged version, It's About Damn Time, just came out on Cinco de Mayo, on May 5th. So applause for that. Congratulations. I know it's not easy to get a book out in these times where people can't get together. So I think it's brave, it's great, it's so inspiring. I had, a chance to get into it a little bit and learn about your journey with you from sleeping at the San Francisco airport, being homeless, being very angry about the fact that you discovered most investments in tech go to, straight white men, leaving out women, leaving out people of color, LGBTQ folks, and then set out to change that and now arrive at this somewhat crazy number of having invested in over 100 companies in just 5 years, fulfilling your dream of becoming the first Black, gay, female venture capitalist out there in the Silicon Valley, going against all these tides. It's just wow. So, just looking at your story, I can just bow, and I hope everybody here on Remote Daily can join me in for just an applause and just a moment of letting this sink in. Congratulations, really, on everything you have achieved. And I think my first question around your journey is really going fast forward to today, right? 5 years now, 5 years of Backstage Capital. How much of what you set out to do has actually changed?
I think a lot has changed. And sometimes it's like the frog being boiled, right? So a lot of times we don't necessarily understand how much has changed or how much has been achieved. Personally, we'll do that. And I have this thing that, so Chacho, who's in the room, he's on our team. And I have this thing with our team where I'm now really asking people to look back on the week of what they've accomplished in that week, because we get so heads down and we just do the work that you forget about just how much you do. So I would just recommend to everybody here that for a week, at the end of each day or at the beginning of each day, kind of type out in a draft what you're about to do or what you did that day. And then at the end of the week, look at it and read every single line, because I think we just miss out on that. So I do think that while we have so much road to go, so much further to go as an ecosystem, so much has changed. And one of the things I set out to do was change the narrative, or help be part of changing the narrative, part of it, turning the old ideas on its head, on their head. And I can say without a doubt that has happened. There is a new narrative. There is a new, we've even contributed to a new vernacular within Silicon Valley and beyond, which is underestimated founders over underrepresented founders. We are both, but underestimated is a very different connotation. So the fact that people feel empowered and emboldened today, who 5 years ago have said that 5 years ago they did not. To me, that's one of the biggest takeaways from this. I think of Backstage itself as a case study. I do want to make sure that I say and just slightly correct that I am not the first Black gay venture capitalist, but I'm the first to start a fund from scratch the way that I did. And there's too few of us for sure. And so changing the narrative, making people, not just for people observing, but to be reflected back to people, to know that they too can achieve so many things. And they were already achieving so much, they were just being overlooked. I think that's the biggest part. I think that's going to continue to be the most important part of this as we go and get return on investment capital-wise. So I would say the same thing to you, for instance, in 10 years, sitting on the hundreds of millions of dollars that I could potentially have, or, or that people could have raised and deployed or returned on their funds as a duplicate of Backstage. I would say the same thing to you, that it's the reflection and the representation that has been the most impactful, and that will continue to be.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Arlan. And I just want to share my screen here to look at Backstage's website and the headliners, as you call them, your portfolio, because this is, I mean, it's just so impressive. Like the amount of relationships you have been building, the amounts of businesses you have helped kickstart over the years, the amounts of day-to-day operations you help building is just incredible. And may I ask you, can you maybe share one story that we see here, maybe the last startup you invested in, or what one you particularly find to be standing out?
Yeah, so we have 130 companies in our portfolio. So whenever I'm asked that question, I just get to a point where I'm like, how do you choose a favorite? There is no favorite, and there is no true front runner, because there's so many who are front runners. I'm looking right now at Capway. I see Capway, that's Sheena Allen. Like me, she was born in Jackson, Mississippi. She has a much cooler accent than I do, though, because she stayed there. And she's working on, and has been for several years, financial literacy for the underbanked and the unbanked. And for so long, she would go to these investor meetings with quote unquote traditional investors, and she would be questioned about, what do you mean people are unbanked? What do you mean people don't have bank accounts? What do you mean people bury their money or hide their money under mattresses? That doesn't make any sense. And if they do, why would they make us money? What they didn't understand, what she understood and what I understood growing up that way, is that there are millions and millions of people who don't trust banks and who don't necessarily get treated well by banks. I have multiple times been treated poorly by banks. Like that is just a fact. And they're going to, my brother, for instance, used to bury it. And he's a savvy guy. It's not that he was just, Forrest Gump out there. He was just like, I'd rather it get maybe stolen by someone on the street than for the bank to already have robbed me blind. That was just his thinking for a long time. And so she was able to, she was not able to raise for so long because of that bias, and that, the people thinking, well, these are going to be minorities and they're not going to have any, they're not going to be banking. So why are you doing a banking product? And we met, and I saw it immediately. And so many people, I think, haven't come to see it. You fast forward to today, and she has Alexis Ohanian as a lead investor, and Alexis is many things, but I'll do what many women had done to them. I'll say his wife is Serena Williams, but he's an investor who is very well respected. He's the CEO of Reddit, and or the founder of Reddit, and now she has some backing, some true backing. So we put in the first 25-50K. That was coming from outside of angels, and helped her connect with Alexis, and now she has I just saw her 3-year plan that she rolled out to me, her product map, just this week, and it's going to probably change many, many lives in a big, profound way, especially now with the way the stimulus is being rolled out and doled out. I just released an op-ed on Fast Company with Gusto, the payroll company, about how minorities and women are being left out of PPP and other stimulus. And so this is just right on time. So when I see her face, I think about the times where she was sort of not taken seriously because maybe she has a Southern accent, which I think is beautiful, but maybe someone else thinks makes her not as intelligent or something ridiculous, right? Or because she's a woman or because she's a person of color. And how I'm very grateful that funds like Backstage exist so that I and others on our team can recognize these when others can't.
And Chacho just shared the op-ed. I'm going to talk about that with you in a minute. I just want to stay with venture capital for a second, because there have been studies on why venture capital is flowing always in the same ways. You know, the PayPal mafias, the boys clubs, the structural racism, the biases. What is your very personal view on that? After these many years of spending time in that world, what stands out as a reason for you?
That there is bias?
That the venture capital is still so unequally distributed?
I think there are a few reasons. I think they were the same 10 years ago, 5 years ago, same today, but they're just getting better because people who are underestimated are making it better, and other allies are. I think it falls into a few buckets. Very briefly, one bucket is just blatant racism, misogyny, and homophobia. Like, just you have, in every group, you're going to have some people, no matter how clean and crisp their suit is, who have those beliefs. And if they're in power, they're able to really shut the gates really easily. Another thing that is more prevalent, and I have to believe it's more prevalent than that, is a simple ignorance and a simple not knowing what they don't know. We all have privilege. We all have ignorance to something. We all have a blind spot to something that, you know, we try as woke people, we try so hard not to say the wrong thing or assume the wrong thing. And we know that even as underrepresented people. And I think that you have to give the benefit of the doubt to a lot of people who are straight white men. Part of that is in having these conversations, which I've had 3 of them yesterday, at 3 different ones with straight white men about how they have been oppressed in a certain way or have had adversity in a certain way. And I love to keep up with that because I never want it to be us against them. There is an ignorance there. And then there's this bucket of willful ignorance. I'm rich or I'm doing well already. I have a good job. I don't want a lot of people. I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're other white men. I don't want anybody coming in and getting what is good over here. I'm going to shut that down. It has nothing to do with racism. It's just, I'm greedy. And so there's all of that mixed up together. And there's not, as you can see with, and I don't know if you want to get political here, but as you can see with our current president in the United States, there are not a lot of people who will stand up to that. And so I cannot sit around and wait for my ally to stand up and say, hey, this isn't right and they should get what they should get. It has to be me. It has to be us to do it, because we kind of waited. We kind of sat around and said, well, maybe we can, maybe they'll talk to each other and work this out. That doesn't happen that way. It just doesn't. So it's like the individual, and then the allies can help too. Like, we need all the help we can get, like lifting the whatever object off of us as the oppression. I'm not going to say no to it, but I'm not going to count on it only. And that's where I think companies and funds like Backstage step in. We try to show what is possible, what is out there. We try to give a highlight to what is out there. And if certain funds decide that they want to listen, that's wonderful. But we don't beg. One
last question about your fund I found very interesting is you went through rough patches, of course. You had announced a larger fund, $36 million, that didn't come to fruition in the end. You had to let people do your own business. What did you learn from that time?
So one of the reasons I wrote this book is to talk a lot about that. It, like many things, it's not that wrapped up in a bow. I don't know how familiar people in this room are with venture capital or with funds that raise in general, but we don't have enough time to go through it all, but I'll just say this. We're still raising our fund. We'll still raise other funds. Almost every fund I have ever encountered, and except for maybe Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia, and the one that John Doerr is part of, can't think of the name, probably blocked it out. Except for these billion-dollar funds, I have not known any fund whatsoever who raised overnight, who raised immediately. So I feel like, and I say this in the book, I talk about it a little bit, I feel like I was used as an example and sort of a let's put her in her place kind of thing because of the thing I just talked about. Because I was making a lot of noise. And when you're bringing attention to people's money and the fact that they're able to make so much money and they were making it in private, and then you say, well, look at this disparity, it's just kind of interesting timing that an interesting framing that me doing something that is so routine in venture was called out as a failure. And in the same breath, they didn't mention the 100 companies that we had invested in. So that's almost like it's on purpose, right? So I don't think there was a lot of learning in that moment. I mean, I have from day one said that we are woefully underfunded, under-resourced. That's the entire point of this. My point has been that if we can make it happen, if we can find these companies with minimal amounts of capital, and if our minimal checks can make so much of a difference, why don't the larger funds do this? And why can't they do this? So to try to put me up and say, as was tried, they tried, it just didn't land because people were like, what are you saying? Of course, you're just saying that they couldn't do the thing that they're saying they couldn't do, right? When it came to having to let people go, we had 3 rounds of layoffs in the last 18 months. One of them was on purpose, or kind of by design, because of the way that we built the company. And 2 were, they happened to us. I mean, we did not want to do that. And they were both, one was like a lot of people, and it was very jolting. And one was just 2 people, and they were both equally as heartbreaking. It was really tough because you're talking about people that you care about not being able to maybe pay their rent. The only solace I could get through this last one was that there was going to be some sort of stimulus that caught them. But it's heartbreaking. Even with all of that, though, everybody on our team knew and knows today what they're in. Chacho can tell you, I tell you every week, Chacho, I tell you every week, this is how it could be. Like, this is the amount of money we have. We may not have enough for 2 months from now. So I tend to, like I said about my wife, and we have like autonomy, I tend to think that about the people who work at Backstage. You are making a decision as an adult, and I'm being as transparent as humanly possible, and we're doing something awesome, and I'm the first person to help you find other work if you don't want to be here. It's just how. So it's not as it's not as dramatic as I think people think it is. It's like, no, a week before that article came out about us having to lay off people, I was on the stage at South by Southwest saying we had to lay off people. So it wasn't any news that was broken. It was just they didn't necessarily see it or hear it first. So I sleep easy at night. I just kind of sleep easy at night because I'm just like, I know we're doing the best we can. And I know that we're being held to a different standard. And I know the goalpost has moved for us. Where's the person questioning why our fund didn't come through? Where's the person questioning why our LPs, our anchor LPs fell through? Why they didn't go do it? Why, that's the question I want answered. So that's why it felt so therapeutic to write this book.
Yes. And I highly recommend it. You also put out an audiobook. You have an amazing way of connecting with people through your voice. Your podcast, Your First Million, is another example for that. It's just a very immersing experience to listen to your thoughts spontaneously sometimes recorded in the morning, I guess at the very place you're sitting at right now. So I highly, I just immersed myself in it, and I couldn't stop listening. And the same with your book, which you recorded in a studio that I happen to know in Austin, Texas, the Arlan Studios, which is one of my favorite places in the world for live concerts during South by Southwest. So just check out the audiobook about, It's About Damn Time. If you can't find yourselves reading a lot, it's a real experience to travel through this journey with Arlan's voice. And Arlan, I would like to bring up the piece on Fast Company again that you just co-wrote, co-published. I'm going to post a link in the chat once again. It starts off with stating that the unemployment rate is 18% higher for Black workers, 33% higher for Latinx workers compared to their white counterparts. 55% of the jobs lost in April were held by women. Women's unemployment rate is 20% higher compared to men. So that's just a few words that you start the article with. And here on Remote Daily, we have been, I think, day by day kind of exploring, trying to rewrite the social contract for the post-pandemic time. Can you please share with us, also referring to the article, what you would write into that contract, what the measures are that you're just suggesting for underrepresented groups in this very moment?
Yeah, so I co-wrote it with Gusto, the payroll company, and with their COO, Lexi Reese. And I was really proud to partner with them because I think they've done a really awesome job. We just have, like, I think to me, it's like really simple stuff. It's not crazy demands or crazy things. It's just a lot of what held people back that we saw personally from getting PPP and then ourselves from EIDL was like a lack of relationships with banks. And this isn't just, I mean, there are white men who had the same problem too, especially in rural areas. But a lot of times, going back to the bank thing, there's not that access to a banking relationship. And even if people who are at these banks, the priority was given to people who had much bigger bank accounts and who had loans out and things like that. So we're simply saying, make it mandatory that you don't have to have a prior banking relationship in order to take out PPP, so that it opens up some of those barriers. We're asking for a specific grant to be given to minority and women-led companies that just sort of bypasses all of this application, just to, because what we're trying to do is keep the people who are really keeping the country going, you're trying to keep them safe. And it's not just a handout, you're trying to keep all of it working. And then there is making the payroll companies themselves. So a company like Gusto, how great would it be if instead of Gusto saying, here are the banks you can go to, which they did really well and right away, how great would it be if they could simply be the lender? They already have relationships with 100,000 small businesses. And I'm a customer of theirs twice. One of the companies that I'm a customer of theirs, there are 2 of us on the payroll, 2. So it's not like, so they're reaching people who have 2 to 500 employees. And so to me, that's what would be like one of the most interesting things we could do, is like make them a lender and make others like them a lender. And yeah, there are just things that can be written in really easily right now while we're debating what this next 3 trillion will be. I think it would make a huge difference, any of these.
Thank you for sharing this with us, and I encourage you all to check out the article. It's really a lot of suggestions about how to do better right now. And as a last question, Arlan just mentioned your podcast, your first million, very personal, intimate way of connecting with you and your thoughts, and really congrats on all what you put out there on a daily basis. On your podcast, you shared some life advice. You shared a particular phrase that I would like to bring up. Live so that there is standing room only at your funeral. And as a last question, I would like to ask you, please share with us, what do you mean by that?
I heard that when I was in the 9th grade. And from that moment on, I wanted to have it either tattooed or just followed it with me. To me, it means, and that from that moment, since I heard it in the 9th grade, which I'm sure was on some poster or something or some book, I live that way. And to me, it just means impacting as many people as you can. You don't have to influence them, but impact them in a positive way, as many people as I can for as long as I can, while taking good care of myself, so that I can be the best version of myself when I'm doing that. You don't want to impact people only to ignore your own problems. And that's what I did for too long. But impacting people in a positive way for as long as possible while taking good care of myself, so that there's a second phrase that goes with that, that's from, I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'm going to say it. Y'all help me. Coelho that's the last name. How do I say that full name?
Eleanor speaks Portuguese, so I'll let her chime in.
Coelho.
So the famous poet, and he says, I have lived so long that someday they will have to forget me forcibly. My heart was inexhaustible. And so those two phrases to me go hand in hand. And it's just, I won't know when it happens. I won't know who was at the funeral, but I can look at, every day, just imagine and think that, am I living to my true values? And am I living in a fulfilling way? And am I living up to the standards that I have for myself? And, do I make the people that matter to me proud? And I do that checklist, throughout. So that's what it means.
Arlan, I want to thank you so much for your time. I, as a journalist, had a really hard time preparing this interview because there's so much in your story, in your work that you do every day, in the people you touch. It's just very hard to compress this into 20 minutes. And I hope we can welcome you back on Remote Daily, talk more, learn more from you. And I hope you all out there get It's About Damn Time on your local online bookstore. Thank you so much. A large round of virtual applause for our guest today, Arlan Hamilton. Thank you for going against the tide and showing us a little bit of how you do it. Thank you.
You go to itsaboutdamntime.com. That's how you can keep up with what I'm doing and grab the book.
Just shared the link again. And Arlan, do you have time for the rest of the hour, or are you going to leave us now? Because you're very busy.
Yeah, it's up to you. I could go either way. I will take
okay, because this is
15 minutes.
Great. Thank you for sticking around with us. This is the time for us to say goodbye to our live stream audience. Thank you out there. See you tomorrow. And Arlan is going